What's good people, it's Empathy or Alex here, and welcome back to another Dead by Daylight video. In today's video, I'm going to be showcasing 3 original non-licensed killer concepts that have been created by the Dead by Daylight community. In my opinion, I believe that these concepts are some of the most interesting and exciting concepts I've ever come across while researching for killer concepts, which I believe is due to both the design of the killer and the thoughts and ideas that have gone into the killer's power and its perks. So quickly, before we get into the actual video guys, all ideas will be credited in the description below, if applicable to do so by the creators and designers of these killer concepts. But anyways, that's enough waffling from me guys, let's get straight into the first killer concept. So guys, for our first killer concept we have a killer called the Snake. Now, regarding its backstory or its lore, I believe it's based on the Greek monster story of Medusa, who was a woman who was cursed and turned into a half snake, half human by, I believe, some Greek god of some sort. And legend has it, anyone who looked at her instantly turned into stone. Now the lore of this killer, I believe, ignited the inspiration behind her actual power, which as you can see now, is when her snake power is active, by holding the power button, survivors who look at her for at least 1.5 seconds have their FOV narrowed down, which is basically the survivor's perspective. And after this, for every 2 seconds looking at her, it continues into tears, for example like Nemesis, where it is narrowed down by 25% for every 2 seconds until tier 3 is reached, which is where the player is now playing in first person, which is actually a pretty sick concept. And to remove this for survivors, this can be decreased by standing within 20 meters of the survivor who isn't in chase, and therefore decreases the tier every 10 seconds whilst in this terror radius. Now getting into the snake's perks. Its first perk is called Slithering, which is whilst not in chase, for 20 seconds movement speed is increased by, obviously dependent on the level of the perk, 4, 5 or 6%, and the terror radius is also reduced by 4, 5 or 6 meters, and this ends when a survivor is found. Next up we have Infrared, which is if a survivor is in your FOV without any obstacles in the way, and are within a 24, 36 or 48 meter range, then Infrared lights up and makes an audio cue, which is obviously quite similar to a perk such as Whispers. And finally we have Cold Blooded, which is when standing next to a fire, action speeds are decreased for 17, 20, 23% for 30, 35 or 40 seconds. And these affected actions are breaking pallets, picking up survivors, vaulting windows, breaking generators, hooking survivors and interrupting survivors. Now after hearing her loadout, what do you guys think of her as a killer? For me, I think her power is a really interesting and creative idea. How well it would work in a game and how well behaviour could get it to work is a completely different matter, but if it did work well, I think it would be a really interesting killer to play against. And not only that, I do think the perks are quite decent. I think Slithering's a good perk as just general map movement and obviously would be useful for pretty much every killer. Infrared I don't think is the most useful perk, just due to the fact that there's already a few perks like this, especially Whispers, which is kind of popular, and I don't think it would really overthrow this. And finally we've got Cold Blooded, which I think's a really strong perk, but sadly it's quite situational as there's a limited amount of fires throughout the map. But if you are within that range of being near a fire, I do think that this perk could be very strong, and again could be useful for any killer just to speed the game up. Next up guys, we have the Pirate, whose idea is based on the classic stereotype of a haunted pirate really, who's been lost at sea and now defends his haunted ship, which as you can see from the picture seems to be his map, which would actually be a sick idea, as a haunted ship would be insane on Dead by Daylight, except I don't know how they'd make the exit gates work. But anyway, getting into his power, Murderous Macaw gives him the ability to release his parrot onto a pallet or vault, and any survivor within a 10 meter radius of the parrot has their location revealed to the killer. And if an action is performed on the vault/pallet where the parrot is located, the survivor becomes injured. And the parrot's special ability allows him to recall his parrot from anywhere in the map, wherever he's lodged it. And if the survivor is within the recall line, their location gets revealed to the killer. And this has a cooldown of 60 seconds. And now, introducing his perks, Unleash the Kraken is where you have hooked each survivor at least once, and all generators are blocked for 50, 60 or 80 seconds. Dead Men Tell No Tales is when a survivor rescues another, and this applies the blindness status effect to the rescuer for 120, 150 or 180 seconds. And Sarin of the Sea occurs when the obsession enters your terror radius, causing the obsession to scream and reveal their location to the killer for 5, 10 or 15 seconds. So, what do you guys think of the Pirate? In my opinion, I think he'd be one of the sickest killers to introduce to the game, as I feel the concept of a pirate in general would just be really sick for the game, and I'd be eager to see it. Regarding his ability, I think it's really sick. The idea of a parrot and just giving you that extra information sounds like such a cool power. However, regarding his perks, Unleash the Kraken is actually one of the artist's perks, which is a new killer releasing, so that would have to be changed and that just wouldn't be relevant. Dead Men Tell No Tales I think is a pretty decent perk, which is similar to one of the pig's perks in Make Your Choice except for the blindness status effect, which I think would be pretty decent, not OP but a decent perk. And finally we got Sarin in the Sea, which I think would be a pretty decent perk also. However, how OP or relevant it would be is a different question, and surely if the Obsession recognised that a killer had this perk, they would just not go within the killer's terror radius if possible. But in general, I think the pirate is such a cool killer concept idea, and I'd love to see something like this added to the game. And finally, for the last killer concept, we have a killer by the name of Mimik, which is based on a Wendigo, which if you guys don't know is basically a mythological creature originating from Canada. And the general idea of this killer is that it gives you the ability to mimic a survivor in order to deceive and trick them. His power, called Cannibal's Cry, replaces your terror radius with the sounds of other injured survivors for a period of time, and if you hit a survivor while this is active, you let out a shriek, mimicking one of a hooked survivor, which is heard throughout the whole map. If a survivor is hooked within the ability duration, all survivors outside the terror radius suffer from the blindness and hindered status effect for 8 seconds. Now for his special ability, when using Cannibal's Cry, it can be changed to a Wendigo Psychosis, allowing the survivors to see the aura of each other, but their auras take the form of your killer the Mimik and will each emit a terror radius. The killer's aura can also be seen, and all auras can only be seen beyond 40 meters. In addition to this, his other active ability, which is just available throughout the whole match, allows him to crouch and completely reduce his terror radius without being able to move for 5 seconds, and on top of this, his terror radius increases by 12 meters and emits generator sounds. Now, after the longest ability description ever, getting into his perks. Butterfly Effect, which gives a token every time you're stunned by a pallet, up to a maximum of 3, 4 or 5 tokens, and for every token your bloodless movement bonus is increased by 10% and a token can be lost if a basic attack is missed. Next, Last Resort gives you 3 tokens to start the trial with and is consumed after a survivor is sacrificed, activating for 4, 8 or 12 seconds, showing the auras of survivors in lockers. And finally, Hex Deception, which appears on dull totems, as a matter of fact, which is the opposite to a normal hex, and makes the 2 nearest generators completely invisible, making them non-interactable and collidable. If this is cleansed, it takes place of other hex totems on the map, but if there isn't any, it just gets cleansed and is no longer in use. So guys, for the final killer concept, what are your thoughts on the Mimik? For me, I think it's a super interesting idea, and one that would actually fit the game quite well if executed well by behaviour, as I think the idea of a killer mimicking survivors and just their actions would be really interesting, and it would just give a new level of mystery and excitement to the game, and would just give a killer ability that we've never seen before. I think it would just provide a whole new playing style for killers, especially the Mimik itself, and would overall just help with the development of general strategy throughout the game for all killers, which I think could help take Dead by Daylight to another level. And now for the perks. First up, with Butterfly Effect, I don't think it's the most useful perk out there, as I just think there's better alternatives for pallets, such as Spirit Fury or Enduring, but again, it isn't the worst perk, and I suppose it could be used. Next, with Last Resort, again, it's quite a situational perk, but if used correctly, I think this could work very well, especially as it would counter the likes of barbecue and chili, as survivors love to hide in lockers when they know a killer has barbecue, where this counters it. And finally, we have Hex Deception, which I think is an extremely interesting perk, and again, how well behaviour could get this to work is a different story, but if they manage to pull this off, invisible generators is such an awesome concept, and it would really slow down the game for the killer and the survivor, and just give a killer a massive advantage. So guys, that just about wraps it up for all 3 killer concepts in this video. This video was super fun to make, and researching all these killer concepts made by the community was so fun to do, and I'd be genuinely curious if any of these got implemented into the game, as I all think they have a good enough design and good enough ideas to actually become an actual killer. So, what are your guys' favourite killers? For me, it would probably have to be the pirate, as I think just the idea of a pirate in the game would be so sick, but at the same time I think the Mimik's idea is super cool also. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your ideas But anyway guys, that just about finishes it up for this video. So if you did enjoy this video, please show your support on the channel by either liking, commenting, subscribing, all that good stuff, just to let me know that you enjoy the content at the moment. And maybe this type of content, if you want to see more killer concepts, let me know, as I'm very happy to do that. But anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video and supporting the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.